Okay, so I want to keep this video as short, sweet, and simple as I possibly can. So I came up with 5 specific things, not necessarily in chronological order, but 5 specific things that I think you guys should be looking out for when going about picking a powerlifting coach. Again, none of these are in chronological order. However, I do think some of these are way more important than the others, but we'll get into it. Now, before diving into this content, I want to make sure you guys know to take this seriously. This process is very important. Okay, this is your training. This is the future of your training. Okay, training takes time and you don't get time back. On top of that, this is a financial investment. Depending on the coach you go with, it's a very expensive financial investment. So take this process seriously. All right, let's move on to the first step, the first thing. In my opinion, probably the most important thing, but again, this is not in chronological order, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Relationship. In my opinion, again, by far the most important piece of this. If you cannot have a relationship with your coach, your success is going to be limited. It's going to be capped. There's going to be a ceiling. The reason why is because we aren't machines. We are humans. We are people. We are fallible. We have faults. And the road to success is going to be filled with adversity. And if your coach can't handle that, if you can't handle that, if you guys can't handle it together, go through it together, be willing to go through it together, again, which your willingness to go through it together comes from a healthy relationship. If you guys aren't willing to do that, you will not get to the end of the road. You will not see that success, period. All right. So making sure that the relationship, that you can develop a strong relationship with this person is very important. So get on the fucking phone with them, get in front of them, talk to them, learn about who they are, figure out their personality, figure out their passion. Beyond that, I'm going to use myself as an example. Make sure that they can believe in you. Okay. The biggest thing, and this is what I said, my current coach is Alex Uslar. And the very first conversation I had with him on FaceTime, right before he onboarded me as a client, I specifically said to him I was going to become a world champion. That's my goal. That was my dream. That's what I was going to do, with or without him. Okay. And my mindset was, I believe in me, so you better fucking believe in me. Period. Okay. Your job is to coach me for sure. And I understand there's a time and a place to be realistic and set realistic goals and all that bullshit. But when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and you're going to think I can do it too. That's what's important to me. I don't need coaches behind my back, or I don't need a coach behind my back thinking, he's not going to fucking make it. This kid, he thinks he's going to do this, but he's not. I don't need that shit, okay? There's enough haters out there. There's enough negative crap out there. I want positive circle, period. That's it, all right? So that's very important to me. That's part of my relationship. That's the relationship I develop with my coach. I want to trust my coach, and I want him to trust in me. That's the relationship. Okay, so relationship, very important. The second thing is communication. Now, some people would think that communication belongs under the same umbrella as relationship, and it does, but it's so important that I kind of had to make it a separate bullet point. Okay, without proper communication, there will be no real coaching. There will be no effective coaching. Athletes, you cannot expect good coaching, good programming even, if you are not providing feedback, if you are not sending videos, if you're not writing in notes. The only way for a coach to truly optimize your training, especially if it's online, is to see it. See how you're performing. Hear from you. What's going on? How did this move? Right? We're 6 weeks out from a meet. How's that injury? What's bothering you? We need to know those things. Our coaches need to know those things. So you need to be able and be willing to communicate with your coach. On the flip side, coaches need to be willing to communicate with their athletes. A lot of coaches, especially in powerlifting, take on too many athletes or are in it for the wrong reasons and therefore don't communicate appropriately. Okay, they aren't giving either adequate feedback or genuine feedback. And those two things are very important. Okay, they're not mutually exclusive either. There's a difference between giving feedback and giving feedback that matters, that's informative, something that's useful. Okay, if you cannot give, or if you cannot have effective communication between the two of you, and it goes both ways, it's a two-way street. Okay, both people will be at fault if communication is shitty, no matter what. Okay, but if there cannot be effective communication, there will not be effective coaching. Okay, so communication is extremely important. Can you communicate with this person? Are they willing to communicate with you? Keep in mind, coaches have lives too. Okay, they're not obligated to be at your beck and call, every 5 seconds, okay, of the day. That's not how it works. However, as long as they're willing to give you feedback, even if it's weekly, bi-weekly, whatever it is that you guys agree upon, however it is that they run their system, however it is that they do their coaching, as long as it's kind of understood prior to the sign up, so to speak, and it's mutually agreed upon, it's okay. But as long as they're willing to give genuine feedback, be informative, help you, optimize your training as a result of that feedback, and as long as you as an athlete are willing to give that feedback and communicate, let them know what's up, let them know what stressors you've got going on in your life, let them know how school's going, work's going, whatever, all variables that matter. If you guys are willing to communicate, you will have a successful relationship. So that's number 2. Okay. Next is education and expertise. Now, this one's actually really, really important, obviously, but again, in my opinion, I think it really is third to these two, because without these two, without relationship and communication, this means nothing. If you guys don't get along, if you guys just don't see eye to eye, if you feel like he doesn't care about you, doesn't believe in you, you're never going to stay consistent with the program. You're not going to believe in it. You're not going to go into training ready to attack it because you don't trust it. Okay? So relationship first, communication first, education, expertise, that's when that comes in. It's right after you can make sure that these two are solidified. Okay? All right. So education and expertise, this stuff can mean a multitude of things. All right, this could be actual certifications. This could be courses. This could be just a general proof that they know what the fuck they're doing. And education and expertise also comes from their own competition history. Now, this is a key thing that I think a lot of people don't recognize. You don't have to be a high-level competitor to be a good coach. In fact, most amazing coaches in the sport are not and were not high-level competitors. Straight up, like period. And I think that's perfectly okay. Like that's actually probably a good thing in some cases. And so the expertise and the education is just, it's a blend of their own experiences, of their own education, what they learned, how they learned, where they learned from, who they learned from, their passion for learning. Are they always going to keep learning, constantly trying to better themselves? These are important qualities, and these are things you want to ask the person who you're looking to have coach you. Okay, these are very important things. You have to be stern about this. You have to know, like, hey, so how the fuck do I know that you know what you're doing? Not just through word of mouth, not just whatever. Like you want to know, like tell me, what books did you read? Like, are you certified? What did you do to prove to me that you know what you're doing? Because I'm trying to go places. I'm trying to become a champion, and I want to do it with you, but I need proof that you can help me get there, right? And that's the line of thinking you need to have. Okay, this is kind of like a business partnership in a way, right? Like a marriage. So education and expertise is obviously extremely important. And again, I think the 3 things you should be looking at specifically: A, what is their actual academic education, right? What's their academic background? Did they go to school? What did they study if they did? That kind of stuff. The second thing is their own competitive experience. How long have they been competing? And then the third thing is how long have they been coaching? Right? Now, we're going to get to reputation, which is going to come down to who they've coached, but this one's really more so how long have they been in the game? Because at some point, yes, you could be doing something wrong for 10 years. Just because you're doing something for a long time doesn't mean you've been doing it right. But at the very least, at some point, you're going to catch on to what works and what doesn't, or the industry will weed you out, right? That's kind of the beauty of capitalism in that way. If you're not performing, if you're under-delivering, you won't make it, okay? So, and therefore, you probably won't be a coach anymore. So, how long they've been in the business, how long they've been in the industry, in the sport, and obviously, like I said, their academic experience, their academic education, and then their competitive experience. Those 3 things are kind of like a nice melting pot, a nice medley of education and expertise. Okay, now moving on to the 4th bullet point: networking and their career. Okay, this is extremely important to me. To other athletes, I can imagine it not being as important, but I'm going to go into it anyway because, again, I think it helps when making a decision, especially when it's very close between very good coaches. Okay, so when it comes to network, what do I mean by network? First and foremost, it's quite literally, who do they know? Who are they around? I truly believe to my core that you are the crowd you keep. I'm going to be honest with you. If my coach hangs around with bums, I'm going to assume he's probably kind of like a bum. Right? But if my coach is ambitious and successful, and if he's around successful people, if his group is successful, if the people that he's with are successful, then I know that me being around that person, that coach, I'm going to be successful as a byproduct of that, right? And that's important to me. I want to know who's their group, who's their crowd, who do they hang out with, what is their network, and more importantly, if they truly are deep into the industry, maybe their network, maybe the people that they're around are others very successful, high-level coaches and athletes. And if that's the case, I know that they know what the fuck they're doing because they're around those people. They're learning from those people constantly, right? That's something that some coaches just don't have access to, that some coaches just don't get to have, right? I'm gonna be real. Like, if you are a coach and you are constantly around world champion athletes and world champion level coaches, right? Like, you're gonna learn a thing or two versus a coach who's never around those people, versus a coach who's never in the gyms with those types of people. It's a big difference, right? So I take a look at network, and I think that's very important. Also, too, I go into this from a business perspective. You know, I'm an entrepreneur in the fitness industry, and so I also want to know what other value can my coach provide, or what other connections and resources can my coach provide me with that can help me excel in the industry, so that I can then turn around and help others excel in the industry, right? So it's almost like a two birds, one stone thing. But network is actually very important, way overlooked, and again, in my opinion, just very important. But in terms of career, this one's a little underrated. So by career, all I mean is this what they do for a living, right? And this is kind of a trick question, because it's like, you would think like, well, duh, you know, like obviously this is what they do for a living. They're offering coaching services, but that might not necessarily be true, right? If this is something that is the coach's absolute career, this is literally all they do, then they probably know their shit, because they've made it their whole entire life, right? They spend at least 40% of their life, 40% of their time just coaching, just learning, just growing, just being with athletes, handling athletes. Like, all of that stuff is very important. And so you need to figure out, like, okay, are they a history professor? Are they a full-time coach? You know, are they a football strength and conditioning coach as a primary job, and they do powerlifting coaching on the side? What's their career, and how does that mesh or blend into their coaching style, their coaching expertise and education, right? Okay, so very important. Network and career, they kind of go hand in hand, right? The last thing is something that, in my opinion, isn't as important, but it is something that shouldn't be overlooked or understated, and that's reputation. Okay, so you guys could probably guess where I'm going with this, but reputation in the sense of, what have they produced? Okay, not just for themselves, but really more so with their other athletes. Who are their other athletes, right? What have they been able to do? And also, how consistent is that? It's great if a coach has a one-hit wonder and has one star athlete, but it's better if they have multiple, right? Because it means that they didn't just get lucky with a genetic freak or something like that, although I don't totally buy into that stuff. So my memory card ran out of room while I was talking about that fifth step, reputation. So I'm not totally sure where it cut off, but hopefully you guys were able to get the gist of it. You want to make sure that you have a coach who has some sort of resume when it comes to their success with other athletes, or even with themselves, okay? But primarily with their other athletes. You want to make sure that they have a system, they have a structure to their training that is replicable. That's something that they can use for you and that will work for you, right? Because the more individuals that they have whose their program worked for, or their coaching style worked for, the more likely that it'll work for you, right? If they only have one athlete who they had a ton of success with, the chances or the odds of it also working with you is slimmer than they would be if he had multiple athletes. Okay, so this is a sixth step, all right? I recorded a whole fucking thing on this, and it just, boom, done, gone. It is what it is. That's life, right? So here we are. We're going to record this again. This is specialization, okay? This is the sixth final step, the bonus prerequisite when it comes to picking a powerlifting coach, okay? Specialization is something that's really important. I think it's very overlooked and very underrated. And it's something that if you're smart, you'll take advantage of it. Now, what do I mean by that? As an athlete, you need to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses. Okay, what are you really, really good at? And what are you not so great at? What do you really need from a coach? And what are some things that you can kind of do or pick up on your own? For me, for example, I really need good programming. I want to make sure that, because I'm going to work my ass off no matter what. So I want to make sure that when I'm working my ass off, it's for something, right? It's going to do something. I'm going to get the result I'm looking for. I'm going to get to where I'm trying to go. So I need to make sure my programming, my structure is pristine. So I picked a coach that specializes in programming. Okay, specializes in attempt selections and things like that. When it comes to form and technique and emotional support and motivation, all that stuff, I can handle most of that stuff on my own. I also am perfectly fine with seeking out advice and coaching from other coaches who specialize in those things. That also, by the way, brings me to the next point when it comes to specialization. Pick a coach who recognizes that they specialize in those things. Okay, I don't really want a jack of all trades. I want somebody who's absolutely godly at that one specific thing when it comes to coaching. Okay. And somebody who's going to be open to me taking on another coach in the facet that they may not be as strong in. And again, to me, that's extremely important. I don't expect my coach to be amazing at everything. I expect my coach to be really good at the one thing I truly need them for. And then everything else I can figure out and learn on my own. Okay. And like I said, most coaches, especially really, really good coaches, understand that, value that, and will absolutely be willing to have you take on a coach that fills that gap or fills that role or something. Okay. And in fact, to be honest with you, see it as a red flag if a coach says, oh, absolutely not. If I'm your coach, I'm your only coach. It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. All right. So keep that in mind. Now, I want to wrap this video up with one very important detail here. Some of you may be thinking, well, shouldn't price play a role in picking a powerlifting coach? No, it shouldn't. There's a reason why I didn't put it on the list. Okay. Pricing and the worthiness of an investment, especially a financial investment, is relatively subjective when it comes to something like this. Okay. In my opinion, the dollar amount, the dollar value is something that's completely subjective. What's worth it to you? Well, to me, to be honest with you, Alex coaching me all the way through to a world championship from ground zero. Like, I started with nothing. I started with just the fucking dream of being a world champion, and he brought me through to becoming a world champion. To me, that's worth thousands of dollars, way more than I paid him in coaching. Okay. And so to me, the dollar amount, it's subjective, man. Like, it really is. And I also don't think the dollar amount that a coach charges you, it's not indicative of the quality of coaching either. Like, I'm not going to tell you, oh, the more expensive, the better. That's not how it works. All right. There are 16-year-olds that compete once and think that they own the show, that they're elite coaches and they can coach. Like, that's not how it fucking works, bro. They're not worth $200. Right. So the only advice I can give is to make sure, A, obviously you want to make sure it works within your budget, but B, you want to look for a coach whose the value proposition matches the expense. And again, that's going to be completely subjective, dude. That's completely subjective. The only thing I'll say is that it is worth the investment. 9 times out of 10, when you find a coach, when you find a good coach, they are worth the investment. Okay, the coaching is absolutely worth the investment. Also, you get what you put in, and you're never stuck. Okay, so you can't, it goes back to like what I was talking about, communication, feedback, all that stuff. If you don't communicate, if you don't give feedback, your coach can't optimize your training. If your coach can't optimize your training, has no idea what's going on, you're not going to have great results. You're just not. Okay, so you can't blame that on your coach and say, oh, it wasn't worth the money. Like, no, dude, like that was you. Okay, so you got to recognize that as an athlete. But also on the flip side, if you're putting in, if you're investing, if you're giving that feedback, making that communication, and they're just not even meeting you halfway, switch. Like, move, find a different coach. Don't ever feel like you have to stick with somebody. I appreciate loyalty. I think loyalty is extremely important. But remember, you're a fucking human being with standards, with boundaries, with expectations that need to be met. Okay? And if they can't meet those expectations, that's totally cool, but it's just not a relationship for you, right? So don't be scared to step away from a coaching relationship if you feel like it's not meeting your expectations, meeting your standards, or something that you think is of value. Okay, or at least enough value to justify the financial expense and so on and so forth. All right, so guys, that's pretty much the video in a nutshell. Again, I apologize I don't really know where it cut off with the reputation stuff, but hopefully we got enough in there to make sure that you guys got the gist of what I meant to say. That said, I may make a part 2 video on this, which would be how to find a good powerlifting coach, because I think it's tough. There's so much stuff out there. It's super oversaturated. And I think that's a really important topic. So if you guys want to see a part 2 video on what goes into finding a powerlifting coach, a good powerlifting coach, let me know in the comments. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Let me know. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.